I once believed that being anxious was the worst thing a man could be at his own wedding. The worst thing turns out to be unimportant. The day I became aware that I was discussing the final expenses while seated at the edge of our apartment's dining table. I had my laptop open. Like silent warnings, receipts were arranged along the screen. For the rooftop after-party venue, Sienna's relatives have flights reserved for $1,200. The hotel blocks deposits. Personalized party goodies. All in my name. I had never complained. I never requested a bill split from Sienna. I felt that if you could, you should hide things out of love, and I could. I have a successful logistics consulting business. I keep things secret, invest wisely, and lead a lean lifestyle. I made that error. They assumed I was unimportant because I was silent. Arriving whirling in a flowing ivory robe, Sienna was giggling about something one of her friends had sent her while holding her phone. Before heading to the refrigerator to get a drink, she leaned in and gave me a quick peck on the cheek, as if she were tossing a penny into a wishing well. "Oh," she remarked nonchalantly. I updated the after-party list with a few additional names. Only a handful of the past. Slowly I looked up. What sort of individuals? She swigged her mango juice. Avoid being strange. Only Kellen and Carter. Years have passed. They are not harmful. Her ex-husband, Carter. Her ex-boyfriend Kellen once battled someone at the door and interrupted her birthday party while intoxicated. I put down my laptop and said, "You invited your ex-husband to our wedding party?" Her words, "It's not a wedding party." She didn't appear to notice that the atmosphere grew chilly, but she said, "It's just a celebration. Casual vibes." I remained silent for a while. I simply gazed at her. She wasn't kidding. There was not a single chuckle to be heard. There was no wake, only Sienna swirling her straw in her drink as if she hadn't just turned my stomach. "Do you believe that's suitable?" At last I inquired. "Oh, Malik, hurry up." She waved her hand and sighed. "Carter has remarried, so grow up. Kellen, on the other hand, is only there for cocktails. To be honest, you're acting somewhat insecurely at the moment. Uneasy." It was a slap of a word. It was true, therefore it didn't hurt. It was lazy, which is why it hurt. The simplest method to return a man's discomfort to him. As if I was making this up in my mind and not responding to actual rudeness. Her mother entered before I could react, leaving me speechless. Darlene West is the queen of backhanded counsel and passive-aggressive praise. She walked in with a Bloomingdale's shopping bag, and the kind of arrogant expression that made anyone feel poor, regardless of wealth. "You're still complaining about the list of guests?" Darlene remarked, hardly giving me a look. "It's a party, please. We'll simply give Jamie your place if you don't like it." I blinked. "Jamie?" She grinned. "Sienna's childhood sweetheart, Jamie Lell. Do you recall him? So endearing. He's coming in via plane." Something cracked inside, yet I remained motionless. Not cracked, not snapped. Similar to the initial crack in a windshield before it spreads and destroys everything. It dawned on me then. The groom wasn't me. I served as a stand-in, an integral part of their twisted little performance. Sienna laughed. She leaned toward her mother and giggled. "It's only a joke. Calm down, baby. Calm down." Insecure is another word for it. Sharp, empty, contemptuous, and intended to silence. I didn't say anything else. I simply gave a slow nod. "Correct. Jokes only." I stayed up late in the guest room that night. She believed I wanted space because I was upset. Since a guy can only overlook so much before exploding or vanishing, she was unaware that I was changing everything. I went with option number 2. I went over all the small moments that had preceded this again. She used to make fun of my dislike of crowds while praising my discipline. How Darlene once inquired as to whether my work consisted solely of typing. When I informed them we could afford a little ceremony, they smirked and insisted on a rooftop with champagne towers and exotic blooms. Every time I quietly gave in. I didn't want to cause trouble. Peace was what I desired. Giving peace to those who don't appreciate you turns out to only educate them to treat you like silence. When Sienna dressed the following morning, she hummed. After the ceremony, she intended to wear a new white cocktail dress, which she tried on. "Babe, what are your thoughts?" In the mirror, I gazed at her. Objectively, she looked stunning. However, a mansion without warmth is like beauty without kindness. Impressive, hollow, cold, but unlivable. Nice, I remarked bluntly. The tone was scarcely perceptible to her. She had already sent someone an SMS. Her eyes flickered and her smile softened. She then locked the screen after spotting me observing. Carter was a name I already knew. Kellen, perhaps. The silent preparations began then. I didn't yell. I didn't make any charges. I didn't plead. I opened a fresh note on my phone just now. The joke's title and the price of being it. I then began listing under that. Just numbers, no sentiments, no recollections. Figures that are objective, hard and cold. I would demonstrate to them the expense of constructing a stage without one if they thought I was a prop. With the exception of the raucous laughter that accompanied the ding of a group call, the flat was silent. I was standing motionless with my back to the wall in the corridor, right outside the bedroom. I wasn't accidentally listening in. I needed to listen, so I did. I had a gut feeling that I would drown in the contempt if I continued to act as though I didn't notice it. I also didn't feel like drowning tonight. Not even the door was completely shut. With her legs crossed and her face illuminated by the gentle blue glow of the screen, Sienna was leaning on the bed. Carrie, June, and her 3 closest pals were on the video call. The same 3 who had laughed when Darlene unintentionally called me Martin, her accountant, at our engagement dinner. They were noisy, laughing, drinking, and didn't seem to care that I was home. The first distinct voice I heard was Carrie's. "Hold on, Carter is on his way. I didn't hear that portion from you." Sienna laughed and answered, "Yep. Kellen too. Why not? Let him all witness my brilliance. God, oh God. Now let out a squeal. There will be a circus here." Then June added his voice. "Malik her. When the actual line of guys arrives, he will be standing there looking like a lost substitute teacher." What came next made my stomach spin, even though that hurt. Sienna smiled. "He will be all right. Being in the background is nothing new to him. Malik is silent. No one would notice if you swapped him out for a coat rack." When they held, I froze. My hands clenched at my sides, but I remained still. I didn't barge in. My phone wasn't thrown. I simply stood there, taking deep breaths, and observed the shadows moving beneath the door. Then the voice of Darlene appeared. She was on the call, but I was completely unaware of it. "Malik isn't horrible at all, to be honest. As forgettable as unsalted butter, he is." More giggling. She went on. "Last week I started calling him Mr. We're Invisible." Sienna and I nearly burst out laughing. "That's messed up," June laughed. "But true." They were not stopped by Sienna. She didn't stand up for me. The loudest laugh came from her. I stopped being astonished at that point. When the call ended, I walked back into the kitchen, calm on the outside. I sat down at the table, opened my notebook again, and wrote at the bottom of the page in small block letters, "They don't think I'm a guy. They consider me an ornament." She appeared a short time later, sporting one of my shirts as though it were a charming joke. "You're awfully quiet," she said. "I've got a lot on my mind," I replied, and she leaned in and kissed my cheek like a parent bribing a child to behave. She had that glow, the one she usually had after gossiping. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through emails from clients, but my thoughts were miles away. "Once more, you're overanalyzing. Everything will be flawless." Perfect? That word was used once more. To her, perfect meant that everything appeared to be in order. That although it looked well done, it wasn't always correct. It did not imply that it was authentic. I saw her go while humming and sending another text, possibly from Carter, maybe from Kellen, or even from both. That evening I entered the guest room and opened a folder I hadn't looked at in months. Legal documents and my initial prenuptial proposal, which she mocked and persuaded me out of, were inside. I didn't push it. I didn't want our marriage to begin on a tense note. However, I now realize that the stress never went away. It just covered itself in silk napkins and flowers. I began recording everything. Every name on the guest list, every receipt, and every remark that made me feel insignificant. The bank transactions related to the wedding expenses were screen captured by me. She left the RSVP sheet open on the computer, and I snapped pictures of it, emphasizing the names of Carter and Kellen. I sent each one to myself via email. A backup topic line. I wasn't a yelling man, you see. I was a man who watched, recalled, and prepared, not one who barged out or vented online. The following day, Darlene unexpectedly dropped by with a bottle of wine and swatches for centerpieces, which she most likely thought I would pay for. I put on a straight expression when I opened the door. I looked as she remarked, "Oh good," gliding past me. "You're home. I need to ask about the shuttle for Jamie. His flight lands late." "Jamie?" "Yes, dear. Do you recall Sienna's little boy crush, Jamie Lell? He's coming in via plane. She deserves to be surrounded by people who know her well." I stated bluntly that she had me. She blinked. "Of sure, sweetheart. However, when the groom changes his mind, someone has to keep everything together." We both knew it wasn't a joke, yet she winked as though it were. I was not respected by her. She hardly put up with me. I was only the sponsor of her daughter's fairy tale, as she saw it, and I would be written out of the story like a forgotten prologue after the check cleared. I began looking at flights that evening. I typed in the name of our first honeymoon destination, Santorini. I did not yet touch the book now button, but I hovered over it. Not quite yet. One more shove was what I needed. Another indication that all my suspicions were correct. The following morning it arrived. I was asked to assist Sienna in zipping up her new outfit. It was modern, sleek, and white. She was stunning in it. However, my gaze was drawn to the screen in the mirror, while I was standing behind her, and noticed that she was holding her phone. It was an open message. "Are you certain he won't flip, Kellen? Please, Sienna." Not even Malik notices. He's too busy offering assistance. Without saying anything, I zipped the dress all the way up when she turned to smile at me. She believed I was blind. She believed she was in charge. The man she believed to be invisible was going to become the one thing that none of them could ignore, but she was unaware of this. I was seated at the kitchen table as usual, but something had changed about me. It wasn't anger. There was no heartache. Something sharper, something colder. A clarity that could not be denied. I inhaled deeply, opened my notebook, and turned to the page where I had begun recording the expenses of the wedding. I wrote at the top of the list this time. Not just the facts, not just the costs. Evidence, chronology, pattern, and strategy. I began at the very beginning. $12,000 is the venue deposit. Early in February, that one was transferred from my account. Sienna insisted on the rooftop view of the bay, so I remembered. "It has to be unforgettable," she added, and I concurred. I simply had no idea that I would be the one attempting to forget it afterwards. Then came the $9,800 catering bill. On a typical day, neither of us consumes any of the vegan, gluten-free, organic fusion bullshit. However, she aimed to win over her mother's customers. Darlene had stated that the wedding serves as a networking event as well. As they debated over hors d'oeuvres that sounded like chemical formulas, I recall silently nodding, writing the check, and feeling a little sick inside. $5,400 for the hotel block. I covered the cost of accommodations for her 2 cousins, aunts, and uncles who hadn't seen her since high school. I later learned that it was one of them that unintentionally brought her back into contact with Kellen. $2,600 for her cousin's flights from Arizona. She promised to pay for the dresses for the bridesmaids, but my card was used, totaling $3,200. The $1,800 flower deposit. $2,000 for the DJ. Party favors too. Personalized champagne glasses with Sienna and Malik permanently inscribed on them. $1,150. Forever. It was a burning word. Page after page. I continued to write. I calculated the sum and, excluding the ring, it came to just over $46,000. And every charge, confirmation email, and receipt originated from my account. She hadn't even made an effort to help. Not once. I wasn't proud or upset when I saw the last figure. I felt foolish since I wasn't troubled by the money. Money was the ease with which they had anticipated my spending money. As if that were my sole worth. A suit-clad wallet. An hour later, Sienna drifted into the room with another dress in her hand. This one has a big slit up the side and is emerald green rather than white. With her hair done up like she was in a slow-motion film, she spun around in the living room. "What do you think, baby?" she inquired. I looked up. "For what purpose?" "For the post-party." She grinned. "I want to stand out, especially because Carter and Kellen will be visiting. It's kind of funny, don't you think? A room full of all the men I've ever dated. It's funny. Once more that word. I wanted to know whether she truly believed that I was so gullible. If she really thought a man would be amused while she played musical chairs with her ex-boyfriends, as if they were props for a reunion on a reality show. But I remained silent. I simply nodded. She interpreted that nod as approval and encouragement. She then started texting once more while leaning near the mirror. I didn't need to peek behind her. I recognized the person already. She claimed that her ex-husband, Carter, still held her in high regard. She used to get calls around 2 in the morning from her ex-boyfriend, Kellen, when we had just started dating. Her mother returned with Jamie, the fantasy boy, like a trophy. She gazed at her own radiance, admiring it, and I watched her. However, the woman I fell in love with was not there. I observed a performer getting ready for a part for which I did not try out. Although her face was still lovely, it appeared staged, manicured, and devoid of genuine emotion, honesty, compassion, and respect. Without saying anything, I walked out of the room, switched on my laptop, and went into the guest room. I saved all of my screenshots, bank statements, texts, call logs, and receipts, and I made copies of each one. I stored an external disk in my sock drawer and backed them up there. I then started labeling each transaction in a blank spreadsheet. A fragment of the story was conveyed by each line. Line 12. $4,000 Malex card for the catering deposit paid on 3/7/4. Line 22. $3,200 Malex card payment for bridesmaid outfits on 3/19/XX. Sienna's second gown paid with a 4/2XX $1,600 Malex card. Line 35. I also noted that there was no documented prenuptial agreement, no transparency, and no shared financial input underneath it all. She requested me to accompany her to the last venue walkthrough later that night. She was dressed in the same green gown. I have work, I said. She didn't push, but she pouted. I learned everything from that. She had no intention of involving me. She was only keeping me far enough away to not interfere with her act, and close enough to finance the illusion. I walked a step further while she was gone. I sent copies of the signed contracts to the venue manager, caterer, hotel, DJ, florist, and all of the providers via email. I informed them that I required verification that my name was the only one on the list. Within an hour, each of them responded. All of the contracts were solely in my name. I gazed at the emails as if they were the plans for a structure I was going to tear down. Then I realized how this was going to end. There wouldn't be any noise. There wouldn't be any violence. It would be permanent, purposeful, and silent. Sienna came back from her walkthrough that evening with a smile on her face while I sat with my notebook. As if nothing were wrong, she kicked off her shoes and got into bed. Her words, "You're going to love the lighting." I nodded and said, "It's like something out of a movie." She shifted onto her side and texted again. Her smile buried in the shadows. Sounds magical. However, I was no longer observing her. As I stared at the ceiling, I was mentally planning my next move. Because a man will either shatter or vanish after being humiliated too many times. I also didn't intend to break. My face was softly lit by the laptop screen as I sat in the dark. Behind me, the wall clock ticked away at 12:43 a.m. The city outside was humming as usual. However, everything in my apartment was still as peaceful as it could be before anything irrevocable happened. This was no ordinary night of insomnia. I made a decision on this particular night. I was unable to walk back. It was already the last straw. The list was comprehensive. The screenshots were preserved, and the receipts were recorded. My intuition had stopped whispering. They were yelling. Furthermore, I had no intention of playing a supporting role in the bizarre scenario that Sienna and Darlene were producing. I went to our joint credit account after opening the banking app. The wedding expenses had all been charged to my personal accounts, even though it was the card we used for everyday expenses like groceries, out-of-town dinners, and minor purchases. That was intentional. I needed to shield my financial boundaries from her, even if I had been defending them. I removed Sienna and yes, Darlene after selecting Manage Access and scrolling down. 6 months prior, she had managed to persuade Sienna to grant her access, claiming it would only be used in an emergency. That's when I ought to have interrupted her. I didn't. I wanted to be a decent husband in the future. I got it now. Being kind to the wrong people simply makes them more adept at taking advantage of you. I updated the password, set alarms for any activity, and froze the account with a few taps. I opened another folder after that. This one had a separation agreement document that I hadn't examined in more than a year. I had created it with a lawyer just in case back when Sienna and I had our first big argument, one of those protracted yelling bouts over money and trust. We had moved on. Well, I believed we had. The file was never erased by me. I sent an email to my longtime friend and lawyer Bryant Knox. It was a straightforward topic line. Turn on. Then I included every screenshot, invoice, message, and phone record. I wrote, Bryant, I'm done pretending. I'm attaching everything you need. Please move forward with the emergency filing. I'll be unreachable for a while. I'll sign what you need before I go. You know where to send it. Laughing about me in the group chat with Sienna's friends. Kellen's message asking me to show the dress store receipt that was charged to my card without my knowledge. I sent it. I then clicked on a trip link and entered the location I had once hoped to see with Sienna, Santorini. Our honeymoon was planned to take place there. In a stone house with a view of the sea, the goal was to go on a catamaran tour, eat fresh seafood by the ocean, and wake up to sunlight streaming in through white-curtained windows. But with every condescending comment and contemptuous chuckle, that future had been silently destroyed. I decided to leave the morning following the wedding after party. No way back. I downloaded the confirmation, paid in full, and selected a window seat. After that, I took action that I had been putting off. The wedding contracts were unsealed by me. I started canceling them one by one. First was the location. I followed up with an email after leaving a message on an after-hours phone call. I am immediately canceling the reservation for the event that was made in my name. Verify cancellation and reimbursement in accordance with the terms of the contract. The hotel block was canceled by the DJ. I made direct touch with the manager, the florist. I advised them to give the flowers to an assisted living facility. I even canceled Darlene's insistence on providing her VIP guests with a private airport transport. She texted me at around 10 o'clock at night. I replied, take your time. I'm handling a few things here. She added a heart emoji, indicating that she might be home late. That was it. Gazing at the small red heart on the screen, I reclined in my chair. Now it appeared so hollow. A digital decal applied on top of a false base. I poured myself a drink of water and got up. I surveyed the apartment as I stood in the kitchen. The stack of his and her towels that we purchased 6 months ago, the wine rack and the framed pictures. I had the impression that I was living within someone else's meticulously constructed fantasy, as if everything were a set. However, I had finished my acting. When you spend years being the quiet, steady one, you learn something. People think you're weak. They overlook the fact that stillness frequently indicates that someone is paying attention, studying, or making plans. When Sienna made fun of me, I didn't yell. When Darlene made a joke about substituting Jamie for me, I didn't protest. When they converted my love into entertainment, I didn't argue. However, they were about to discover what it really meant to depart in silence. After removing a suitcase, I began packing. Not to take a break or go on vacation, but to vanish. My passport, laptop, charger, paperwork, 2 shirts, 2 pants, headphones, and sunglasses are all included. Since I wouldn't be returning, I left everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. Around 1:15 a.m., when Sienna came back, I was already in bed and feigning sleep. Then, as if nothing were wrong, she climbed in next to me after kissing my forehead and said, "Big day tomorrow, babe." She was unaware that the hotel had already started to release the rooms. She was unaware that the order had been erased by the caterer. She was unaware that her party lacked lighting, music, and champagne. I listened to her go off to sleep while I lay motionless and breathed deeply. I pictured her response the following day. The bewilderment, the misunderstandings, and the fluttering fear in her voice when the groom's seat was empty. Then I saw myself getting on that plane to Santorini, free wine in hand, headphones in. People like Sienna and Darlene only appreciate value when it's gone, which is why I grinned. And I had already left. Like the last curtain call for a performance that never merited a crowd, the after-party day finally arrived. That morning, I was up before the sun had even reached the window. Beside me, still asleep, Sienna had her phone in her hand, her face turned away, and her lips slightly open. She couldn't let it go, not even while she slept. I gently sat up, gave her a long look, and then got to my feet. I didn't bid them farewell. Nothing could be said. I had already packed my backpack. I had 6 hours till my flight. I wasn't in a rush, yet it was 40 minutes to the airport. I had time to make a proper disappearance. I walked around the flat one last time without touching anything. No note was left by me.
No explanations, no drama.
Let them solve it for themselves. That was the idea. I left around 9 in the morning. I would discreetly place my pre-order the night before, go out the door, take the elevator and get into the car. Like a man watching the last moments of a film he's seen too many times, I saw the city move past me. I didn't feel anxious. I wasn't depressed. I was at ease. I went through security, checked in, and headed to the lounge at the airport. I opened my laptop, ordered a glass of red wine, and located a peaceful nook. I checked my email again. Already, the notifications were coming in. The venue management apologized politely for the last-minute change in plans and confirmed the cancellation. The hotel checked in. The staff was directed to notify guests that the group event was canceled, and the room blocks had been released. The DJ had texted that it was no longer needed. A little perplexed but politely confirmed. I hope everything is good. Everything was falling apart. As I had intended, quietly, effectively, and Sienna was still in the dark. My phone began to vibrate. 10 to 12 a.m. Sienna, where did you go this morning, sweetie? I'm losing interest. Funny. Send me a text. I didn't respond. After a few minutes, the text continued to come in. No, 10:29 a.m. You're not responding, Sienna. Are you all right? You left your wallet behind. 10:42 a.m. We're at the location, Darlene. The door is locked. Where is everyone? I waited while sipping my wine. 10:53 a.m. June was a bridesmaid. The party has been cancelled according to the hotel. What's happening? 11:10 a.m. Sienna, are you serious now, Malik? This isn't amusing. I've had my hair done. I wear makeup. The females are going crazy. Give me a call. Then the phone rang. I turned it down. One more. Then another. 12:04 p.m. Darlene. You kid. Sienna's moment is being ruined by you. Do you find this adorable? I grinned. Belle texted me at 12:30. I'm here, Belle. This is crazy. People are shouting. Carter has already departed. Kellen appears foolish as he sits on the curb. Darlene is yelling at hotel employees. There's a sobbing person in the restroom. Compared to Netflix, this is superior. I chuckled steadily and quietly. My wine glass clinking on the table masked the sound. Belle once more. The name of Jamie is on your seat. Promise. To essentially replace you at your own celebration, they brought in a guy. When he saw that the room was empty, he was completely bewildered. I had a mental image of it. Darlene snaps her fingers at the employees. With heels too high to walk in, Sienna is pacing. The unfortunate childhood crush, Jamie, most likely realized he had entered a battle zone while posing as a party. The song that never materialized. The champagne that never came. No one had access to the lovely rooftop. All of it was funded by me, and I now own it. 1:15 p.m. Sienna, why are customers receiving messages about their refunds? What did you do, Malik? 1:22 p.m. Sienna, individuals are departing. The flight of my cousin has been cancelled. You removed the block. This is unbelievable. Pick up the phone. 1:45 p.m. You little coward, Darlene. You weren't man enough to deal with Sienna, I knew it. You wanted this. Make us look foolish? This is something you'll regret. Take note of what I say. I set my phone aside. I'm finally over the buzzing. Let them speak. Allow them to yell. The true twist was that they weren't upset that I had departed. They were upset that I had departed before they had used me all. I opened Belle's mails once more. Me? I appreciate you keeping me informed.
Belle, naturally.
Sienna was warned not to play with you by me. She didn't pay attention. She did not treat you as a partner, but rather as a sponsor. Me? She assumed I wouldn't say anything. The whole time she forgot that I was in charge. Earlier in the group chat, Sienna sent a screenshot of Belle, the finest part, saying, "This party is going to be legendary. All the men who ever loved me will see me shine." Quickly saved it. Brian's legal plan would benefit from that line. Let them continue. With each message they delivered, I added to my resistance. I got on the plane at 2:00 p.m. Seat 1 of first class. As the engine began its low growl beneath the cabin floor, I took a seat, closed my eyes and leaned back. I wouldn't have bothered if the world outside that plane had burnt. I no longer had any obligations or connections to those who believed I was invisible. I wasn't exhausted for the first time in months. I had no sense of suppressing anything. I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want to be picked. I had made my own decision. So I pulled out my journal and scribbled somewhere over the Atlantic. They had a show planned. The theater was canceled by me. They are now standing on a stage without any audience, lights, or a script. And since this wasn't retaliation, I grinned once again. It was made available. In the end, I fell asleep somewhere across the Atlantic. Deep, undisturbed slumber without dreams. The flight attendant inquired if I wanted breakfast after softly tapping my shoulder when I woke up. I said no. I didn't feel hungry. Not for consumption. In any case, I was craving solitude, space, and the ability to breathe without being overtaken by someone else's ego. My phone came back to life as the jet sank into the Aegean glow. 37 calls were not returned. From Sienna all. 12 more from Darlene. Several from numbers I didn't know. Carrie, Na, or even Jamie might be asking why he traveled across the nation to serve as a stand-in at a botched wedding reception. I disregarded each and every one. Just before touchdown, however, Belle's name appeared in a text. It's a bloodbath, Belle. Everyone is being called traitors by Darlene. Carter disappeared. Kellen wrote on social media that he was too genuine for phony gatherings. Jamie didn't say anything when she got a taxi back to the airport. Never in my life have I witnessed such a disaster. However, they have yet to utter your name out. They seem to be attempting to deny your existence. I looked at that message for longer than I had anticipated. It had a poetic quality about it, considering how often they have made fun of me behind my back. They were treating me like a ghost after they had made fun of me incessantly for being forgettable. Erasing me was their attempt to save face, but it simply made them look foolish. It was 3:07 p.m. when I arrived in Santorini, local time. I was greeted by the heat like an old friend. I was at last prepared to listen as the distant water glistened as if it had something to say. My name was on the sign of a driver who was waiting at arrivals. "Mr. Turner," he said with a kind grin. "Welcome." It had been weeks since I had heard my own name used with dignity. The hotel was situated well above the cliffs, with terraces protected by canvas sails that billowed in the breeze and whitewashed walls that glowed in the sunlight. The caldera, the volcano dozing in the sea, was visible from my suite. I took a deep breath, went out onto the balcony, and felt the weight drop from my chest for the first time in a long time. My phone buzzed once more while I was unpacking. "I need you to talk to me, Sienna." One more message. "I'm not really interested in the party, Sienna. All I want to know is why you would degrade me in this way." I didn't respond. She didn't feel bad about how she handled me. She regretted being discovered. Then Darlene's email arrived. "You owe us an explanation," in the subject line. I didn't open it. I sent it directly to Bryant. My lawyer called a few minutes later. Even though he spoke in a calm tone, I could hear laughter behind it. Bryant stated, "I just received the email. By the way, the group conversation, the screenshots you sent, and Kellen's replies are all priceless. Signs of public humiliation, financial abuse, and emotional manipulation. This is no longer only a separation. This wall is strengthened. Excellent. Let's get it done. We'll submit the complete divorce petition by Monday," I remarked. "You built the party. You had every right to tear it down. What about the ring?" I asked. "They don't have a leg to stand on. Everything was in your name, including the canceled contracts. And as for damages, they can bark all they want, but unless they can prove breach, they get nothing." Bryant laughed. "Returned? Receipts recorded." We hung up and I turned off my phone, slid it into the drawer next to the bed, and left it there. No more buzzing, no more noise, just the breeze and the sound of the waves below. "You're a very thorough man, Malik." I smiled a little. "I learned from the best." He paused. "You okay out there?" "I will be," I said. "Just not coming back the same." I woke up without feeling compelled. I walked the cobbled streets without having to explain where I was going. I hiked by myself, pausing to sit in spots where the world seemed too beautiful to talk about. I drank local wine, I ate fresh fish with lemon and olives, and I watched sunsets without taking pictures. When you finally put yourself first, you stop needing retribution, you stop waiting for excuses, and you stop trying to prove your value to those who couldn't see it if you placed it on a neon sign. That's what I wrote in my journal, not about pain, not about them, but about peace. They're scrambling, Belle. Sienna posted a lengthy story saying you abruptly ghosted her. She's playing the victim hard, but the screenshots are leaking. Car's cousin posted the group chat. People are seeing the truth. Belle messaged me again sometime between the third and fourth day. She wasn't bothering me, she just checked in like a true friend. The next morning, I returned to that balcony with a cappuccino in hand as the sun rose over the edge of the cliff. I didn't ask her to continue reporting. She just did. She had witnessed what I had gone through, and she had been a silent witness to the gradual erosion of my dignity. Now she was the mirror reminding everyone that I wasn't invisible. It was quiet after that, even from Sienna. No more calls, no more messages. Silence, but not peace. Not for them. Because people like Sienna don't find peace when the attention fades. I opened my journal again and wrote just one sentence. I was never the problem. I was the reset button they never expected me to press. By the end of that week, I had booked another ticket. Not home Lisbon. Somewhere that didn't know my name, didn't expect anything, didn't carry echoes. And Darlene only knew power when she could control someone else's stage. Without me, there was no production. No lights, no audience. Just her voice echoing in a room that no one entered anymore.